Buddy, Christina, thanks so much for coming over today. And I think what you've done with the boxing gym is just fantastic. It's one of those things that I'll bet many, many people in the city have no idea about over the years, about the good you've done, the lessons you've taught with kids, the humility these kids have learned, the courage they've learned, how it's helped them in their lives. And buddy, how did you get started with the whole concept of the gym for the kids?
Well, many years ago, of course, when I was just 12 years old, my dad was getting drafted into the Army for the WW2 conflict. And he said, I'm going to put you in a boxing program down at the Emmanuel Community Center.
Uh-huh.
He said, Phil Smith.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't at the Emmanuel Community Center back in those days. When I got into boxing, it was down at the Fenwick Club.
Oh, yeah.
And when he took me down there when I was 12 years old in 43, I guess.
Uh-huh.
42, 43. Joe Cita was the coach down there.
Uh-huh.
And he told me, he said, now this is your coach and substitute is your dad until I get back. And that's the way it was.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And Coach Cita was like a second father to me.
Uh-huh.
And the boxers in the program at the Fenwick Club were like family members, siblings and so forth. But and I enjoyed it. It got me up early in the morning to do road work. Got used to doing that, and did it all the way up into high school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great training. But getting back to who got me involved in it, Phil Smith was the one that first got me into the Golden Glove program.
Uh-huh.
At the time that my dad brought me to the Fenwick Club, Coach Cita, it was just amateur boxing. And it was an AAU sponsored event then,
Mm-hmm.
National Athletic Organization. But then when Phil wanted to see me, because he knows I was active, because I would be supporting whenever they had bouts and they needed sponsors, I always was there because I knew it was a wonderful program for young boys back then. Now it's young boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
But Phil said, buddy, he said, we're getting into the Golden Glove program and we need a little more money to send a team to the national tournament, and told me how that worked. I said, well, gee, that's pretty nice. So I got involved with them, and then I saw the benefits of it when I had what I received. So I thought, well, I'll just keep this up. Phil originally called me, they need fresh young blood in this organization. And I was like in my 30s, I was the fresh young person to supply that. That can afford to, put up a couple $1,000s to send 10 or 11 kids to a national tournament. So anyway, Phil retired then eventually,
Uh-huh.
and he had a gym in Norwood, and I was ready for strategic retirement anyway. Never had a hobby, so I went out there and I was overseeing what they did, so I wouldn't go in there and stub my toe on the program. So I was going there for about 6 months. I need to get into a location closer to the west side.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little bit too inconvenient for me to get out there every day. So that's when I kind of took the bull by the horns, and then I got talking to the Recreation Commission, because after all, it's a city-sponsored athletic event that they don't have any expenses. It's all from outside capital. So they were tickled to death. That's all they had to do was give me a facility. So they gave me a building, as I recall, the very first one. It's been so long ago. It was almost on the east side. It was over Mount Auburn in one of the schools.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, just a local elementary school.
I remember that right across from Christ Hospital.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where we had our first boxing program. And it was like getting an initial cold and an infection. You wound up with pneumonia. It just got into it more and more and more. And then you get a national champion. And then, Harry Trester was, I think, the first one we had. And then you go and meet the other parts of the organization of the Golden Gloves that we were a member of, and then not knowing one day we're going to have the program that we have today. But Phil Smith, Raleigh Schwartz, they were the first gentlemen that really got those programs started, and I benefited on their work and improved what I could to the next level where we are now.
That's awesome.
And now Christina, and then wonderful sponsors like the Barrett family is always there to help. And so we're going on to better and bigger things.
That's awesome. And Christina, it's got to be so fun working with your granddad. Yeah, and I know you're so passionate about it. It's been fun.
Yes, it's a very special thing to not only love what I'm doing with the kids, but to be continuing the legacy that he started.
Yeah.
It's pretty unique and amazing.
Yeah. And the kids, the benefit, it's so obvious, isn't it? These kids come from tough backgrounds, and you show them the discipline and the work habits, and it translates to the rest of their life, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes a huge difference. You can see a kid go from the first day they're there when they have behavior problems, no positivity in their life, and watch the kids evolve as they get more and more developed with boxing. It's wonderful.
I don't want to interject and interrupt.
That's okay.
But in her case, because she's an attorney, when some of the parents or sponsors of some of these kids have a problem, they know she's attorney. Is that pro bono when you don't get paid?
My standard answer is I didn't practice criminal law, so I don't have the expertise with that. But there's a couple lawyers in Cincinnati that are very gracious with helping out the older boxers if they happen to have scrapes.
We can
trouble.
use some help.
I'm sure. And Christina, in terms of the ages of the kids that are involved?
You have to be, under USA boxing rules, you have to be 8 to compete. We'll let kids start at 6 or 7 if they can follow directions and train alongside. It's group training, so everyone trains at the same time. And we go all the way up to maybe 22 years old.
Who is your head trainer, or head coach, I should say?
Our new head coach is Rashi Warren, who is...
4-time Olympian.
Three-time Olympian. He's the only American boxer that's a 3-time Olympian.
Wow.
He was only 16 at his first Olympics. And he is just such a inspirational athlete for the kids to be around. And his transition to coach sort of happened overnight, and it's been great.
That's awesome.
Yes.
You've had some great coaches over the years. But we can talk a little bit about Billy Joyner.
Billy Joyner?
Yeah, he was one of the all-time greats, wasn't he? Remember, he fought Cassius Clay, who became Muhammad Ali as an amateur.
Right. Well, you're more of a historian than I am, Doc. Excuse me. I go so far back. I remember the original Dr. Barrett, your dad, and he was a great sports walking encyclopedia. You're keeping up the tradition.
He was in Ezra Charles' corner for a number of his fights. When Ezra Charles fought Rocky Marciano at Yankee Stadium, in the third round, Ezra would open a cut on Marciano's nose, and my dad tried to get the referee to stop the fight so Rocky wouldn't get hurt. Didn't stop it. Went 15 rounds, though.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And he was a legend. And the thing I'm real proud of, I remember going to the gym he had on the second floor on Central Avenue, small gym. And of course, he was a very gracious guy. You could walk up to him and he'd take the time, to listen to you and then move on. But he was a wonderful inspiration to youth and to boxing and to the city. And but we have the ring. I bought the ring that that he trained in and had all his fights in music hall and so forth. Raleigh Schwartz wound up with the ring. And then when Raleigh retired from his boxing program in Norwood, I bought the ring. We did. Golden Glove bought the ring. And it was like a 5-day removal project for that one ring. It's I-beams underneath, 4-inch timber. Well, wrestlers use that too, in addition to boxers. And I only moved it twice. I thought, I won't be moving it again, but it looks like we got our new facility. I'm going to be moving it again.
Raleigh's a great guy. I actually boxed in Raleigh's program at XU. I didn't go to XU, but things that the rules were a little on the loose side.
Yeah, but you always, some of the things you learn in kindergarten, I remember some of the things that we did then to this day.
Absolutely.
And there's things that you remember in boxing that you look in pretty good shape. And you look a little older than 29 years old. And look at me, I'm 95. And the scale is important in my life. It's always been making weight. Every morning I get on that scale, and every night I get on that scale. I never got a weight problem.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, Christina, do you hit the bag?
I do exercise quite a bit, but not at the gym. I'm clumsy. I'm not very coordinated.
That's all right.
The kids already have a lot of jokes they make to see me hit the pads or hit the bag. I'm not ready for that yet.
But you see, I never did. I boxed a lot, but not enough to have 2 frozen shoulders. They came from rolling a product that I use in my business. Now we have machinery to do it, but it's too late now.
But the boxing prepared you to be an all-city guard at Roger Bacon High School at 135 pounds, if I recall.
Well, there's a long story there. You had to be 150 to play ball over at the school. And being in the gym all the time, I borrowed a couple 10-pound weights and put them in my trousers. And I was the only lineman that didn't look he belonged there. But I got across the line quicker than anybody else, and they kept me there.
Yeah, Christina, about how many kids do you have in the program at the moment?
We have about 125 active kids.
Wow.
Each day, about 30 to 35 kids show up to train. And it's a year-round sport, so some of the kids will come in between football or basketball, and then other kids are with us year-round.
Well, it's a fantastic program, and you're really dependent on philanthropy. And how do people help if they do want to provide some financial support to help with the facilities and the training and such?
On our website, cincinnatiboxing.org, there's a donate page. And so the donations can be made right online.
That's great.
Excuse me, Doc. I want to interrupt one moment. Our goal at Golden Glove Boxing is not only to help guide this young man who oftentimes comes from a fatherless family. They're single-parent kids that don't have the benefit of having that strong male model image in their family. So we try to supply that and be there for that young man when he has a question about life or what kind of career am I going to have. I've had kids come up to me and Ron Morgan and
Mark Miller.
Who?
Mark Miller.
Thank you. Mark Miller. Matter of fact, I'm Mark Miller's godfather.
How about that?
He needed a sponsor. I said, sure. What church is it? Oh, Catholic? Yeah. I'm a Catholic. I remember. So anyway, when they came up to me, Ron and Mark, Mr. LaRosa, what would you do if you were us and we wanted to go into a business and wind up like you with a business one day? Well, how could we get started? Well, I had to do a little quick thinking. I said, well, you know, Mark and Ron, you need capital when you first go into business. And, you know, everybody weren't born with, trust funds and they have the capital to do what they want to do. So you have to accumulate some capital. And the quickest way to do it is, now that you're both working, they were working in construction, working with small contractors. I said, save your money, and when you get a couple $1,000s, then come and see me. I won't give you any more plans than that. And I guess it took about 6 months. They had $1,500. They wanted to know if that would be enough. They were in a hurry. I said, well, let's look around the neighborhood and find a building that has a vacant store on empty, a storefront. Look for a storefront, and preferably near a elementary school. Why? We're going to open up a candy store. And they opened up a candy store, and I think it was on Freeman Avenue, I'm not quite sure now. And after they, had it for 6 months, the building was up for sale. I said, now you buy the building, and I'll co-sign it, and then you'll get into property management. You'll have flats to rent, and you don't want to just move in there because you own the building and not pay rent. There's a lot of people who have vouchers in this neighborhood. There's different programs you can get involved with where the government pays for their help or part of their rent. So they got into real estate from this candy store.
How about that?
They've got 12 buildings today.
How about that?
Of course, they're in red line districts, as the realtors call them, but they do their own repairing, and that's what they do for a living. They got 12 buildings.
That's fantastic. It's amazing. But you've helped so many kids, and so often it's behind the scenes, it's quietly, and the good you've done is just absolutely phenomenal.
And and how much advice you give, and you don't get paid for it. But you have to be good in order to be happy in life. And when you give your time and your money for programs like we have, that they just multiply, and everybody gets involved in it. Once they got the religion, we have picnics. You don't have the picnic event every year?
We don't host it, but every August there's a Cincinnati Boxing Legends picnic.
And when I go to some of these events, I'll walk around with a clipboard and get some of these kids' names and where they are, and use it as reference. And just a lot of them, well, like Ronnie Paniotto, the old judge who passed away, if he would have practiced his everyday life like he did when he boxed, he'd still be alive today. But anyway, Ronnie was always a good resource, and he'd come and speak to the young boxers. We have kind of a lecture series where police officers, firefighters.
That's great.
And we have about 4 or 5 welders today that are no longer boxing because they're grown men and family, have their own families, that got into welding because of some of the men that came into lecture were welders. And with the Carpenters Union and the bricklayers, they all come in and talk periodically. And for the future's right there, if you want it. You just have to go after it. Many times they're not aware. They don't know what's going on out there. They watch television, go to school, and there's nobody there maybe to talk about occupations. I know one thing. Program at our still LaRosa still takes them in at the ballpark. They work down at the Reds ballpark.
That's great.
At the soccer stadium, we have venues there for the products that we sell, and a couple of them won franchises. They said, "Well, you're not quite ready yet."
That's fantastic. I remember going down to the 1976 Olympic boxing trials, being in Cincinnati with when Raleigh Schwartz was the Olympic coach that year, and the team went to Montreal and won 5 gold medals with Leon Spinks and Michael Spinks. And I remember that was the first time I saw Aaron, and boy, he was special, wasn't he?
That was Aaron?
Aaron. Remember he lost in the finals or in the qualifiers.
And that's something with Aaron. He was such a natural doc. I remember Smokey Burgess with the Reds. He was another guy. You could get him up at 12 o'clock at night, take him down to the ballpark, put him in if there was a game at such a time, and he'd hit a home run. Never trained, just a natural. That was Aaron Pryor. And he would have won more events, but he never would train to get into weight, to make the weights. And he just was, and after he became a pro, he did the same thing. The only thing is, he would be penalized at the weigh-in, but he always won. He always performed.
And he was just non-stop attack.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, those Arguello fights were something, weren't they?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Christina, do you have some favorite Cincinnati athletes over the years?
I'll go with some younger boxers.
Yeah.
I would say at this point now, Rasheed Warren is one of my favorite Cincinnati athletes.
Well, the Olympics has been a big part of our program.
Yeah.
You look back in our records, we have,
I think it was 7 of the last 8 Olympics.
2 or 3,
Really?
2 or 3 silver medals and about 10 or 12 bronze medals. And, it's quite an accomplishment.
No kidding.
Yeah.
We just don't have a gold medal for a Cincinnati
Well, we
boxer
won
yet, but
3
that's
medal
what
rounds,
we're
but
working for.
When you get
will.
into the Olympics, you have to knock them out if you're American, where the other countries, they're anti-American. But we don't, pressure kids to go on and be pros, and the few kids that turn pro, they know it's a tough profession, and anything dealing with the kind of money in sports. There's the low side and the high side, and if you're not with the right group, you're just not going to do well, and you're going to overmatch you, and you're just be walking on your heels maybe one day.
But you've given some of these kids a great alternative, and somebody have followed it. Guys like Mike Stafford, who, I saw him, poor Mike, who passed away. Literally a week before he passed away, I happened to see him going to the hospital lobby, and he did not look good at all. I said, Mike, what are you doing? I thought he was for his own appointment. He was going to visit somebody in the hospital. I mean, he knew exactly what was happening to him, and yet he was going to visit somebody. And he said that he learned that from you. I mean, he learned that unselfish character and he had such a great influence on so many kids over the years.
Yes. I was lucky to get to work alongside Mike for my first 5 years doing this. And he taught me a lot, and he was a one-of-a-kind coach. I mean, the kids were really impacted by him, and it was big shoes to fill for Rashi, but Rashi was raised by Coach Mike. So both almost as a father and as a coach. So it really is a continuation of...
She mentioned Rashid, who was on 3 Olympics, like you just said. Coming up in the preliminaries to the Olympics, whenever he would lose a fight, he would get rid of that pair of shoes. I have 3 pair of his shoes. I said, what's wrong with these? Oh, no, I don't want to wear them. Bad luck. So I have a little statue, an ebony statue of a little fighter, and I have 3 pair of shoes hanging on the shoulders of this little figure, and those were Rashid's shoes that he got rid of when he lost the fight. And he never lost many, but and he's such a inspiration when you watch him down there. When they start practice with calisthenics, we have that big Ezra Charles ring, and everybody that's going to work out is in that ring doing calisthenics, and he's leading it, And it's just kind of a nice atmosphere to see that. And then it grows as it goes into the next phase of what they're going to do. And when the city gave us that, they gave us permission to use this building. Hey, yeah, buddy, you can use this building over here. When you went in there, you had to practically rebuild the building, and they had a big swimming pool in the center there. What are you going to do with that big center? Well, just fill it in. What? That's all steel, metal. We can fill it in. So I made a call over to the Messer Construction Company. Got a place you won't have to take the dump trucks full of earth out of the city. Just bring them over and over the Rhine. We have a swimming pool. I think like 30 or 40 truckloads of dirt went in there. Then we had to cap it. And then Baker Construction came over. They put a floor on it for us.
Wow.
And both of them, no invoice, no bill. We give them, we're tax exempt, so they could take it off for their taxes. So we had a wonderful floor, and then I think we have the finest gym now in the Midwest.
I agree.
You've seen it.
It's
and
pristine.
now the developers, the 3C DC, they're going to put high-end condos there. And now the city of Elmwood has got a building that they're going to, we're going to take residents pretty soon. And we're getting a whole building now. We have classrooms. When we have our lectures, we can go in and we're getting a little more professional now.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. When my son Luke was in your boxing program.
Was he? I'm going to interrupt you. He was a boxing champion.
I remember hearing that your son was a
light
very
heavyweight,
good boxer.
wasn't he, Doc?
Yeah, but he was so impressed with Rashid because Rashid he said Rashid works and works and works, and so it's a great example for the younger guys.
Yes, yes. And there's something about him. He almost has an aura like a rock star. So the kids just want to be like him, which is nice because to be like him means to work yourself, to the point of exhaustion to get better.
That August event with the Legends of Cincinnati Boxing, that must be something. When you think about the history in this city of some of the great people over the years, that must be a fun event.
I actually haven't had the chance to go to it, but I've seen the pictures, and it really is like a who's who of
I bet.
the past few decades of boxers and coaches. And
And one day they'll be seeing that about you, Miss Christina.
Absolutely.
She's Miss Christina.
Yeah, and you do have girls in the program now too?
yes, I think right now there's 3 or 4 girls training. We've had it where the girls have competed. A lot of times the girls lose interest when they get a little older.
Sure.
But the females in boxing is huge. When we go to these USA boxing
Is that
tournaments, yes, there are tons of girls boxing. You just wouldn't know unless you were involved in USA boxing.
Yeah, there's such great history. But as far as some of your favorite athletes over the years in Cincinnati, not necessarily just boxing, but between Cincinnati, between the Reds and the Bengals and UC and XU, some favorite athletes over the years?
Well, Pete Rose, who just passed away.
Yeah.
And Pete boxed for a little bit.
Yeah, down to Fenwick Club also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember the steam room at the Fenwick Club? They had those radiators in there. They had a garden hose. You had to drink the cold water of the garden hose to survive that place. Remember that?
Well, that's where I first met your dad down there.
How about that? Did you remember by any chance Ziggy Tabor? Ziggy Tabor used to work out down there. Ziggy Tabor represented Turkey in 3 different Olympic sports.
Right.
Soccer, swimming, and skiing. Winter and summer.
That's right. I remember that now. You brought it up.
And Dick Fraley was
And
down
the
there.
Fenwick is still there, I believe. Isn't
Well,
it?
no, that's where the P&G headquarters is now.
Oh, they took
Yeah,
that off.
yeah.
That was in Eggleston Avenue.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
right beyond 5th Street. And Dick Fraley was there for years.
Oh,
Athletic
yeah.
director. He's a great guy.
See, we lived over on Freeman Avenue,
Uh-huh.
and you used to have to walk over there. And some of the blocks you walked on, you were unfamiliar there. It wasn't healthy.
Yeah, I can
you had to run.
imagine. I can imagine. And you had walked through the 37 flood, didn't you?
Yes, sir. I was 7 years old.
How about that?
And the water actually came up around Fountain. It was near Fountain Square, where the city kind of leveled off. It didn't get up that high. It crested and it was over. But back in like Cumminsville and Fairmount, the backwater that pushed back the water, they all had water because it was lower out there in the suburbs, even Reading. Well, the Mill Creek, any tributary that fed the Ohio River backed up, and all those areas were flooded. They had more flood water than people that lived alongside the river, because the river, it didn't go over the bridges, of course, but it came up near the surface of the bridge. But all that other water that backed up the Mill Creek and the Tanner's Creek, any creek that fed into the Ohio River, all those areas had flood. Unbelievable when I would see pictures. Reading had flood problems in Reading.
Yeah.
Well, they had the Mill Creek.
Yeah.
And all those creeks backed up. That's the way it works, you know.
That's something else. And in your business, you always emphasize service. And I know that tonight, when I call for pizza and I call 347-1111, I know that somebody will answer the first ring. They'll be polite and it'll be on time. And you always emphasize that.
Well, thank you, Bill.
I mean, to this day, when you walk into the restaurant, you have some suggestions for people, don't you?
Oh yeah, and I listen to them. You know, I value anybody that walks in and they're going to be a customer. Anything they got to say, I want to hear it, and I let them talk because I have a tendency. Give me a microphone, I won't let you talk. But one thing I was trying to remember a story, and it'll come to me because I had a senior moment while you were speaking. I'll interrupt you.
Christina, do you remember some of your first memories of watching the boxers?
When I was younger, I was the oldest granddaughter, and my dad was busy working at LaRosa's, and I was a handful. And I ended up being my grandpa's sidekick a lot. He would babysit me, and I would ride along with him to the different boxing gyms.
Neat.
And I just always remembered in the boxing gyms how fun it was. People would play games with me. People were excited that I was there because I was his granddaughter. And that stayed with me, those memories. And so now it's amazing to be able to recreate that environment.
That's great. Well,
Her cousin, one of Michael's boys, who's also an attorney, Ryan. Is he a little older than you?
He's a year younger.
You're younger. Well, I would take him with me too once in a while, and maybe you both were with me a couple times. I'd like to take him with me on Saturdays, and whenever I would go into some of the, back in those days, the neighborhoods were more black orientated than mixed in population. Grandpa, you going to leave us here? Oh, they all just tell him you're Buddy LaRosa's grandson, and it'll be okay.
And he was right. When we were little, we didn't know he was right about that. But now, as an adult, I have like special dispensation because I'm Buddy's.
Usually, they look out after her.
They usually think I'm Buddy's daughter, which I think is a compliment to him, but not so much.
Well, there again, how many guys you know, 95 years old? If they wanted to get up, all right, just sit on the court. Right. Can stand up, can touch your toes, and don't need any help to get in, to get out of something. But I don't smoke, I don't drink. In the morning, I get on the scale, and if I had a box 130, what is it, 139 junior welterweight? 139? I could make it. I only weigh about 142, 43. I never go over 145. Keep it under 145, and. Well, you're my doctor. I mean, he gives me a call and said, well, your test was fine. You got 3 more months left. He only wants to see me every 6 months. I said, no, I want to see you every 3 months. So now I'm seeing him every 3 months.
Well, you've done all the right things. It's worked for you, and you're so loved, and your family's so loved in the city. And I remember around 1975 or so when there was the restaurant fire, and Saturday morning out of nowhere came all those high school kids. Ralph Greiser, who coached at Western Hills, rounded up a bunch of kids from LaSalle came, and they helped out a lot, didn't they?
Well, Doc, I tell you, when you have a major fire like we had, and you're closed down, and the word gets out, LaRosa's had a fire, and they won't be back in business for 9 months. Ralph Greiser, who you just mentioned was football coach over at Western Hills High School, he walked over one afternoon when I'm over there. We're kind of sweeping up and working, and our staff, they needed to get paid. They had family to support. The cash registers weren't ringing, but at least we're rehabbing the building, so they're working. And then the bank, Southern Ohio Bank, was our bank. And Hilliard Fjord was the president or the manager down there, and Hilliard came out with a check, and it was a sizable figure. I said, Hilliard, I don't want to borrow that much money. He says, we're here to help you because you're going to need it until you get back in business. Wow. I said, well, that's awful nice of you. When a bank comes to a man that was, in a fire rehab situation and offered me money, naturally, we paid him back once we got settled with the fire department. With the insurance department. I have flashbacks when the man who sold you, the insurance industry won't like this, when the insurance salesman sells you the policy, and then when the firefighters come in and do their shtick, put the fire out, but in putting out that fire, there's a little damage that isn't insurable. And that's not covered. That's the bad guy. The adjuster comes in. So my advice is when you have a claim, there are attorneys in your field that specialize dealing with adjusters, so you don't have to subject yourself to that. So when I got that message, I went and got me one, and I told the adjuster, you have to deal with him now, not me. And then we did a little bit better with because it's really something. Firemen come in, they got to put the fire out. And in putting that fire out, they do a little damage, like all the china's on the floor, and when you throw china 5 foot, it breaks. And but I was very supportive of the fire department, because I went around every house that was there, and I brought him some LaRosa spaghetti sauce. There's always a cook there, naturally. But when the fire gong goes off, he goes on the truck too. But I really appreciate it. They got there, they put it out. The building was intact when Ralph Greiser came over from the coach, getting back to him. He walked around. He said, "Well, buddy, it's intact. It didn't go through the roof, didn't go through your sidewalls. He said, I could bring the team over here and get this place cleaned out. I think you'd be back in business in less than a month. I said, come on, Ralph. He said, yeah. He said, get some dumpsters out here. We'll be over this weekend. He called the coaches at Elder and he coached it up at Oak Hills. I must have had about 30 young men, primarily football players. And then when the word got out, then it even mushroomed. I had more than I wanted, really. But in 29 days, Dr. Barrett, in 29 days, we were back in business again.
That's
29 days. And the insurance adjuster said maybe 3 to 6, maybe longer months, you'll be out of business.
That's the ultimate in community, isn't it?
And so those young men and coaches showed so much character to help me get back in business. That's when Hank Zurich, who was my publicist.
I remember I used to love the Saturday morning open the paper and see who's in the Hall of Fame this week. And I'm assuming one of your early Hall of Fame inductees had to be the great John Sacco-Wheatley, who's the only person in both Xavier and UC's Athletic Hall of Fame, played 3 sports at XU and coached 2 sports at UC. But favorite memories of Sacco?
Favorite memory? Sacco liked to visit, places that sold alcoholic drinks, and he would stand at the bar, and he had quite a consumption ability, huh? And he would leave. I remember one time there was in an alley downtown. There was called the Barn, I believe. There was no barn in that alley. It was a bar.
Oh, the Rib Barn or something?
Yeah,
I remember
barn.
that.
He called it the Barn. And when you went in there, they had a little jazz club, and Sacco would be in there, call it his watering hole. And when he left, walking back to get over on Walnut Street, 2 guys made the mistake of jumping him. Well, one of them wound up with a broken arm, and the other one, I think he had a fractured skull, and then Sacco just went on home. He was quite a guy.
Well, he played professionally at 3 sports, all pro for Detroit Lions, and he was something.
And you know how he died?
Yeah, eventually he got hit by a truck.
That's it. A truck hit him.
He was in an NFL alumni thing in California. Across the street, got hit by a truck. Went into the hotel, asked for a towel to cover his head, and
that's about the only way he was going to go out, Doc.
Well, he was missing a piece of skull after that. You could see his brain pulsating. He didn't want to fix it. He kind of liked the looks of it.
What a guy!
Yeah, he was
great.
Guy. He was a classic. Oh, well, Buddy and Christina, thank you so much. You've done such great things for the city and continue to, and we cannot be more grateful.
Well,
Thank you.
Christina, thank Doc and his family. They've been very generous to Golden Globes.
Absolutely. We exist because of generosity, like what your family has given.
And we're going on to bigger, better things, Doc, when we get into Elmwood.
Neat.
The city had to go through some legal
zoning
requirements and things, and but we're going to have matter of fact, I'm going to add a massage facility there, because some of the businessmen there, they'll be welcome to come in. I have a masseur there, a sauna, and a steam room, and I want to get the businessmen. There used to be Ike Himes, who was a businessman, and he sold tickets that you could cash them in if you picked the right horses. I don't know what they called them. They were books, and Elmwood had a few books there. A lot of the little towns did back in those days. Yeah. And so I still remember the boxing pictures that were there in Ike Himes' facility, and I bought them, and I have them, and so they'll be coming back to Elmwood.
Awesome.
All the old champions.
That's awesome.
It's going to be like a museum, Doc.
It will be. That'll be so neat. And Buddy, you almost didn't wind up in the pizza business. You almost wound up when Elmer invited you into the slaughterhouse business. How'd that go?
Well, Elmer, God rest his soul.
Did he pass?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know that.
It hadn't been that long ago, within the 90 days.
Really?
Yeah. Well, Elmer, he loved to play poker and cards, and some great gambler told me one time, buddy, don't listen to all those stories that guys they win all the time. They never lose, because there's 2 kinds of gamblers: losers and liars. And Elmer's a liar. God rest his soul. Yeah, Elmer.
He was fun though. He owned Queen City Sausage and
Right.
still does all the Reds. And he said that when he was in 7th grade, that it was a warm spring day, and at the school, the windows went all the way from the floor to the ceiling, and there was a girl out in the yard. She said, "Hey, Elmer." And he leaned over to wave to her, and the teacher kicked him out the window. He fell out the window, never went back to school again. But didn't he invite you to join the business early on? The
Well,
slaughterhouse?
I tell you the truth, what happened, Doc, we were actually in the kindergarten together. Well, we went to St. Augustine. We lived on Freeman Avenue in a tenement. And then Mom and Dad moved to a little community on the west side called South Fairmount.
Mm-hmm.
So they took me out of that school and put me in St. Bonaventure. And the only thing my parents didn't quite like at the time is I had to study German in the 1st grade. But it was a different time. But I left Elmer, and then years later, after I grew up and kind of lost track with Elmer, and here he is, got his own little sausage company, making hot dogs and bratwurst and so forth, and very successful.
Yeah.
And then here I am in the pizza business and doing pretty good. But then before that, I was making deliveries, and he was delivering too. And we'd run across, Elmer, buddy, how you been? What are you doing now? Brought up to date. And one day I saw him about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I'm still delivering, and he's walking. I stopped. I said, "Hey, Elmer, where's your truck?" He said, "Oh, we're done. We get early, done today." "How you get done so early?" He said, "Well," I said, "Gosh, I'll have to work till 5 o'clock." He said, "Why don't you come on down? We're hiring down at the packing house." I said, "Really?" Well, my uncle owned the company I'm working for, and he's not going to like it, but I'm going to go down and talk to him. I went down, and they said, "Yeah, we'll put you on, but you got to start early in the morning." So I went down the next day. It was like at 5 in the morning. My mom said, "What are you going to get up that early for?" I said, "I'm going to start on a new job." "Your uncle won't like that. You quit him on short notice." I said, "Well, it was over the weekend, and they hired me right away." Well, I never had to tell him because that was my first and last day. Doc, they had me working on the killing floor of a slaughterhouse, and all the entrails would be put in tubs. My job would be to go through the tubs and put the different. I don't want to say anything else, but some of the places that bought some of the products from those tubs we go into.
What'd your mom say when you came home all covered in blood?
She says, "You're not going back there tomorrow." That was the end of it. So my mother told me to quit. I never quit a job but that one. And Elmer laughed. He thought that was funny. To his dying day, he got even with me.
Well, Christina, buddy, thank you so much.
Thank you for
we're so
having
grateful.
us.
We're so grateful for you in this city.
And thank you, Doc, because in addition to all the historical things Doc's saying, he is my personal doctor, and I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for him. And if you have any gentleman 30 years or older, get your PSA taken from your family doctor or whoever you go to for medical care. I'm sorry, Doc, I'm giving you a commercial. But if you do have a positive, go see Dr. Barrett at the Barrett Center at UC. Always go to a teaching hospital. They're at the the cutting edge of technology.
All right. Thanks, buddy. And I think you're just catching your second wind.
Okay, Doc.
All right.
Thanks, Doc.